Good morning, everyone. My name is Lacey Mann, and I am the NAE 4HA Professional Development Committee Chair. And this is our monthly webinar. We're very excited this month because the University of Florida, we have Vanessa Spero Swingle, a regionalized specialized 4-H agent, Andrea Lazzari, 4-H agent, Beth Shephard, FCS agent, and Angelika Keene, a SNAP-Ed public health specialist, here to present us a very important topic, 21st century partnerships to grow youth programming in urbanizing communities. So the Healthy Living Task Force has just merged into the Professional Development Committee, and we are so excited to have them. And so what we are going to do is they're going to be representing that task force today. And if Beth, would you like to kick it off? And I just want to thank you all for joining today. And I will hit mute. I apologize. I'm coming from the Colorado State Fair today.
No worries. Thank you. So this is actually Vanessa, and I'm going to start us off because I will be on this for half and then off to somewhere else. So we're all from Florida. We all work with the University of Florida Extension. And at the time that we kind of created this partnership, I was a county agent in Brevard County. And for those of you that don't know the geography in Florida, I believe we actually have a map in one of the slides. But it is we're on the Space Coast where the shuttles used to fly out of and now the rockets go off of, so just east of Orlando. And we have a very unique county. It's very urbanizing. It used to be a little bit more kind of rural in some areas, and now it's kind of suburban, urban a little bit. So we've got a unique challenge there to really try to engage diverse communities through partnerships, because we're not rural, we're not the only ticket in town, and so we have to look through other avenues in order to really get our programming securely done. So I'm going to go ahead and go through some of our slides. So there's our introduction slide, and there's kind of who we all are. Once again, our introductions. I now serve as a regional specialized agent, and we do a lot of partnering in our state, especially through family and consumer science programming and the SNAP-Ed program, as well as with 4-H, in order to really have a multifaceted program. Because just as a 4-H agent, we all know you can't be an expert in everything, and that's when you really look towards other people in your office or other people in your region or district that you can work with on a regular basis who have the skills that you might not have or might have the expertise, and then you capitalize off of that. And so that's why we work so well together, and we're from such a diverse background. And Andrea stepped into the position that I had when I was a county agent, and I now serve as a regional agent. And one of my functions also is to develop some of the statewide programming revolving around healthy living, which is how I got all of them involved in this today. And I could see we didn't update our slides very well. So Todd is on here, and Todd is our liaison with our 21st century contacts. So he's the person that really kind of called us up and got all of this started. And Angelika, we did not have on this slide, but she is with us, sitting here to ready to answer questions too. So once again, the background on the Space Coast. So this is what we look like. This is where we are. As I said, we're an increase in population type of county. We're the 10th most populous county in Florida right now. We compete with over 285 listed civic, recreational, and social clubs. So like I said, we are not the only ticket in town. We always have competition. We always have other people that are pushing their programs. And we do not have FFA in this county, so we are unique in the aspect that we can offer a lot of animal science programs that other programs can't offer. But that's really it in terms of how 4-H can be unique. So if we don't team up with other organizations, we're not going to be able to reach youth like we would want to. And with that comes into our issues, which are really just this, competition with other local organizations. 4-H still has that. It is, cows, sows, and plows, and that's what people think of when they think of 4-H. They don't think about all the new programs that we do on a regular basis, all of the STEM technology, all of the healthy living, all of the citizenship and leadership that we are still touting that people don't realize are so important, and all the life skills that we teach through 4-H. So we really have to look at a way to realize, how are we going to get to kids in the community? How are we going to get to them without having them come to us all the time? On top of this, our office tends to be in a very kind of hard to get to location too, so that doesn't make it much too friendly really to get a lot of adults and parents involved too. So we really need to go to where our population is. And so that's kind of where this really took off. And I like to tell this story because this is really how it all began, which is through a failed garden. I had gotten really excited about doing 4-H gardens in the past, and I have an environmental education background, and so I said, I want to do gardens, I want to do gardens. The very first thing that I did when I said I wanted to do gardens was I actually approached Beth, our FCS agent in Brevard, and I said, do you work with a school right now, since she managed the SNAP Ed program in the county? Do you have a school that you work with that you think administration would be on board to do a garden? And she said, oh, yes. And she recommended a school. And I went out there, talked with administration, talked with the after school program. They said they were totally on board. They were so excited. We built all these fabulous gardens. I learned a lot from that first garden, like how close the hose should be so the kids don't have to drag it 200 feet. And we had a really successful start to the garden. But then my contact, my coordinator, left that site. And the person that moved in was not really that excited about doing gardening. And so I tried and it just didn't work out. So I just chalked that one up. It didn't work out. What are we going to do next? I'll go to some other sites and start some other gardens there. About 3 years later, Todd Persino gives me a phone call. And again, he's with 21st Century after school programs and just all after school coordination for the county. He called me up and said, do you remember that garden you did at the school site? That was awesome. And we would love to have all of our new sites that we're writing grants for written in and have school gardens at all those sites. And I said, no way, that's awesome. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, and this is all because of a garden that didn't really work out the first time around. So I actually ran over to Beth's office and I said, hey, Beth, I might have some more programming opportunities for you. So she jumped on board also. And we pretty much developed a program where we would, I would do 4-H at the sites and she would do the SNAP Ed programming. She had program assistants at the time and I did not. So I was really committed to going to 6 new sites during the year, starting 4-H clubs and doing gardening lessons and some nutrition lessons. And then she was able to participate with all 14 sites and go to them in kind of a rotation. And so the kids at my sites were also getting the nutrition, which was great because we know that you can grow all you want in the garden, but if kids don't learn to taste it or experiment with preparing it in some way, they're never going to really eat it other than what they've seen. So that really added a nice component. And that allowed us to really build this new partnership that they said, you're in these sites. And it didn't matter if the coordinator at the school site wasn't thrilled to have us. It was pretty much mandated that 4-H and UF family nutrition program were going into the sites. This was what was pretty much written in. We had this agreement. And so it was really just the start to this amazing partnership that we didn't know we were really going to happen onto. So it was able to work really well because the sites provided staff. So for 4-H, we know sometimes it's really hard to get a volunteer. Well, the coordinators became the volunteers. They were the ones that were kind of taking on some of that volunteer responsibility. Does it work out as perfect as our community volunteers? No, okay? It does require a little bit more hand-holding and a bigger time investment because you've got to work around their hours and you've got to really train them on site and try to get them on board during their working hours, not able to really get them to communicate after hours when they're not working because they're not on the paycheck. The audience we were able to get to that you could walk in a room and you've got kids ready to be taught. They provided a space to teach. And in terms of 4-H, they provided funding. They bought all of the garden materials that we needed for on-site. For the SNAP Ed program, the family nutrition program, they were able to receive funding through their grant. So they didn't need all the supplies purchased, but we know for 4-H that was very helpful. We were providing the expertise and the enrichment and the supplies and those lessons that those kids needed. In a 21st century school site, they are really required to have enrichment activities. They should be learning after school. And some of that is tutoring that is done on site, but then it's a lot of other organizations that hopefully will come in and participate with these school sites. And one of the reasons why Extension was targeted was for sustainability of the 21st century program. If it did end tomorrow in the county, Extension is still around and we would still partner with that site whether or not they could offer us any money. That wasn't what it was about. It was meeting our needs and on both ways. We could meet their needs and they were meeting our needs. So we like to say, did it work? And here's the numbers, because we always like the numbers. And so that just kind of gives you an idea, how effective it kind of was that first year that we ran it and the kids that we were reaching. And I'm going to probably turn it over to Beth now because I show you the numbers and then she kind of adds the next element to it.
So while the numbers are great, and I'm the FCS agent, while the numbers are great and we all need them for all of our reports and all of those good things that happen, one of the things that I think is even more important than the numbers that are there are the success stories. We have had so many success stories come out of these, come out of all of our programs. Parents coming in and talking to my program assistant about all of the things that they've tried. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, my kid does not eat vegetables. My kid does not want to try vegetables. There's no way they're going to eat this. And every time we get in there and they start eating vegetables, they go home and tell their mom that they tried this new food and they're amazed and the parents are amazed. But we know that that's really even a bigger change than what we see. Their increase, yes, we see all of that, but we know that they're also talking with their families. They're talking about food. They're trying new things together. And while this is great for some reports, we know when it comes to some of our stakeholders, those stories, the family true life stories is really what they want to hear. So for us, that was, for me, that was one of the bigger things that I really feel that I got out of it, because I have that impact to show that it's really making a difference in their lives. So yes, we do want all of the evaluations, all the things that are there, but we feel like that's really an important component. Now, Angelika is going to come over and talk to you about working with partners and the key ingredients. So, I'm sorry, I said Angelika. Angelika and Andrea are both going to, I think, talk it through. So,
all right. Hello, this is Angelika. So, my role in this was a little different. I came into this after they'd already started this amazing partnership and these great gardens, and I looked at it and said, okay, how can we expand this further and continue this in other schools and other ways and other opportunities? So what we came up with was kind of consistent ingredients or factors that when you're addressing partnerships really help to kind of set the table, organize the discussion, kind of build that rapport and that trust. So these are the 5 key ingredients we came up with that we found most commonly were effective. And the first one is matching the mission and vision. Now, the reason we picked this and we highlighted this is, everybody has like initiatives that they're trying to support, even outside organizations, companies, schools, the universities, the whole bit. So the idea of matching the mission and vision is just to clarify that you guys are both working towards the same goal. And I always give an example with this one is we were planning a healthy food night, and we had a bar and grill offer to partner with us. Although the bar and grill did offer some healthy choices, they weren't necessarily the most family-friendly location. So although we appreciated it, it didn't quite fit what we were striving for the Healthy Kids Day, Family Day outing at the park that we were trying to support. So when you're thinking about your partnerships or who you want to ask or who they want to benefit, although, yes, they could have used the money and the tax write-off and the things, and that's an option, absolutely. It didn't quite fit in the exact situation that we were hoping for that example. With the gardens, we had our partnership going, but we also looked externally. What other partners would be interested in supporting or participating in the garden, but same thing within the school. So we had the after-school care on board, but what other school programs could benefit from this? So we started reaching out to, other teachers or principals or science so that those kids could use it as well. So we kind of had. So that leads into the second point.
Hi, this is Andrea. I'm the current Brevard County 4-H agent. So I'm the one who's currently taking over the gardening programming here with our 21st Century site. So I will share with you our second key ingredient, and that is to identify the strengths of both organizations. So as all of our 4-H agents know, we are already stretched to the max, and so we can't always necessarily be out there for every single day in the garden. So some of those things that the site can actually provide for us would be that staff. So those people, the coordinator and all of the counselors in the after-school site can provide that enrichment and education between the times that we are actually there to help. They also have the space that we don't always necessarily have access to. And they have that readily available audience that, again, is really hard for us to get in some of these counties, especially ones like ours, where we're competing with all of these other youth organizations. And then they don't have some of the things that we do. So they don't necessarily have the education and the expertise in things like gardening or in nutrition and health. So we are really coming in as the content experts and the educational experts who can provide quality enrichment for these kids.
Okay, so this is Angelika again, hello. Once you have your identified strengths and kind of the struggle, a big aspect that I personally feel is so important in building that partnership and building the rapport is identifying the missing skills or resources on both sides. Everybody loves to always talk about what they're strong at, what they have to offer. Most of the time when you go into a meeting, you know, I'm going to hopefully get this funding, or I'm hopefully going to get them on board to provide X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that you're interested in. The flip side of that is to think about when you're looking at those partnerships, like I used with the example of the Healthy Kids Day, partnering with the brewery, that wasn't necessarily the most solid idea because it was a kid-focused event. But they did have the money, so I needed that, but that didn't help either side because it didn't reinforce what we were both looking for. So when you're meeting with your partners and when you're having those discussions, focusing on what do they need? What is it that they're going to get out of it? What is it that you can assist them with? Like I said, yes, they could have used the brewery example, could have used the tax trade-off, but that really wasn't a strong fit for what they were trying to do with their branding, their marketing, for what we were trying to do, the whole bit. So we partnered with a different restaurant instead, but I've kept them in mind for other entities and other, like fun adult-run initiatives or programs such as that has worked very well. So you have your points that you really want to think about is that both partners need to get something out of this. So whenever you're talking with them, making sure that you ask them, and my office has a joke that they pick on me because I have a little cheesy catchphrase, but it really helps me remember. Whenever I meet with partners, I always say, now let's dream really big. And what would be your dream, your ideal situation if money wasn't an issue and concerns? What would be the best thing that you would want? What is your dream initiative or program or design or idea? And it just allows for a lot of creativity and discussion. And with this discussion comes out a lot of opportunity to further that partnership. For example, you may be going into a business and say, I really need this amount of money, but they may also want to, provide you volunteers. Because as we've talked about with the 4-H world, they're always looking for volunteers. And sometimes like programs such as Target or Publix have give back opportunities for their employees. So they may give you the money, but they may also be able to come and help you physically do whatever the project may be. So for in our example, gardening, come out and help build the garden, or maybe you're doing a playground build or walking trail or whatever that looks like. But if you don't ask them what do they need out of it, it doesn't allow for that conversation to occur naturally and kind of thing. Which once you've had those conversations, you've identified what everybody needs, you've talked about your skills and how you're going to address it, and you've gotten creative and found up a solution. The next is our fourth point.
So our fourth point is to provide clear expectations. So when you're working with a partner, you want to be brutally honest about what you can and cannot provide. So for example, when Vanessa actually started this partnership with 21st Century Schools, they had asked if she could actually build a garden at all 14 sites. And being our only 4-H agent and staff member in the office, she knew that that just was not a realistic goal and that she was not going to be able to do that. So they brought it back down to 6 sites, which actually worked out really well for her. So you want to make sure that you're telling them exactly what you can provide, because if you promise more than what you can actually realistically do, it's going to cause some tension and it's not going to be a successful partnership. And on the other side, you want to make sure that you know exactly what they're providing to you. So if they say that they're providing you funding, you want to make sure that that's going to be coming through, because otherwise you don't have the resources that you need to build a garden. So having those clear expectations and having those honest conversations on both sides is incredibly important to have a successful partnership. And then our fifth point is to share the successes, and I'll let Angelika take that one for you.
Okay. When sharing the success, this is my favorite one personally, and that's because it never costs anyone anything to share credit. It never looks bad on a program to have strong entities or partnerships, because people like to work with people that are liked. You see that in behavior, in cultures, and all the time. So all that does is, by sharing the success and promoting that, it just shows that you kind of play nicely in the sandbox, for lack of a better example. And when you share success, it's up to you on what that looks like. So you could be as simple as, you'll see on the presentation here, so we have the University of Florida Extension Office as well as the Brevard After School Care logo. It could just be that simple as branding with adding their logo, their name, maybe posting it on your Facebook or sharing their site, all the way to having a larger or event where they actually have a booth or a table, or maybe you have a celebration at the end of the school year or fitness challenge or whatever it is, your program that you're building, and they actually have an opportunity to speak to highlight what it is. It never looks bad to have those support across the board, and there's no right or wrong way to share credit, provided that, going back to where it all connects, there's clear expectations. Some businesses or organizations just simply want to give you the money, give you their logo, and be done. Some are much more involved. They want to be involved. They want to be part of things. They want to contribute. They want to have a presence there. And that's fine. These are just discussions that you need to have, and so that you have kind of the overall setup. There are a few other things that you want to be aware of that you don't forget when you're moving into your partner. So you have your 5 key ingredients, but there are other things when you're building that overall relationship.
All right, so the first thing that you want to keep in mind is you always want to be patient when you're working with these partners. These partnerships take time to build and develop. So if you go have a meeting with your 21st century coordinator, you're not going to be building gardens the next day or even the next month. It could be multiple months or even up to like a year before you actually see any sort of development in the partnership where you're actually going out to the schools or the sites and working with those youth. You also want to think outside the box. So you don't want to recreate the wheel here, right? You don't want to do the same thing that everyone else is doing. So it's really important to think outside the box and find something that's going to work for you. So in our case, the partnership between the gardening and the nutrition programming worked really well. While 4-H is doing all of the gardening components, because that's our expertise, our FNP, our Family Nutrition Program, or SNAP-Ed, as I know a lot of other states call it, come in and do the actual nutrition programming because that's their area of expertise. And it connects it all together and gives the kids the full circle picture of what it's like to actually grow a garden from start to finish. So from planting that seed to taking a bite out of that tomato. You also want to be realistic. So that goes back, I think, almost to the clear expectations. You don't want to promise things, again, that you're not going to be able to do. And just be realistic about what they can provide, what you can provide, and what this is actually going to entail. So you're not going to make a huge difference. You're not going to reach 600,000 kids in that first year. So take your time, start with a few schools and build your program up from something smaller into something larger. It's going to be much more successful that way. And the last one's a little bit more administrative, but it is really important. So make sure to fill out an MOA or an MOU if necessary. Sometimes when we have those partners, our extension would like us to fill out that MOU, and it just provides both parties with some backup, if you know what I mean. You just want to make sure that both parties are covered, expectations are clear, and all of that. So an MOU or an MOA might be really important and necessary to have. All right, and I think Beth is going to come on in, and she's going to give you some tips on working with schools.
So one of the things that we find, I mean, with a lot of even just our SNAP-Ed or different things, a lot of times we think of, okay, we want to get in the school, we want to do things at the school, and we all know that schools are really busy. They have lots going on all day long, and with all the standardized testing that goes on, hitting different ages can be very difficult. So but in addition to that, we also know, at least in our area, it is very dependent on how administration per school is. It doesn't necessarily work the same in every school. And so you may have an in with a principal at one school, where at another school you have, your only in is the PE teacher, or your other in is the librarian, or it's a 5th grade teacher, or a 2nd grade teacher, or whoever it is. So while you want to continue to keep working with schools in different ways, utilize that right contact, right? Find that right contact. Who is the right person for you to connect with that can be a champion? And even if it doesn't start big in one school, if you are doing a great program, you will find that it will expand because word travels. And when they're finding out who can help, that's kind of what happens. But also consider working outside of school hours, because there are a lot of different clubs and activities that can happen, whether it's after school, which for us is kind of like the daycare of our elementary for after school, or it might be a running club or a jump rope club or whatever it is. Find out how you can already work with some of those clubs that are already there, because it might be the right time. And like we said before, timing is everything. This year it may work, this next year, or it may not work this year, but you ask again next year and they're ready for it. It just depends. Their timing matters too. And consider your time of the year, how much time you're asking for. All of those things make a difference. So we'd encourage you to look for those different opportunities. Now, one of the other things that you can kind of see the summary, looking at the alternatives to working with those different audiences, because definitely our schools have a lot more diverse audiences than if we were to try to just pick who could come or just send it randomly out. But we also know that one of our other things that partner really well for us is our inter-office partnering. And within Extension and within our office, we do a lot of partnering just within. So you can see, and I'm sure you've seen, that the 4-H and FCS have worked really well together on the gardening/culinary after-school program. But there are a lot of other things that go in our office that we partner well with. And I think even before you start looking outside, you might look at who is working inside and how you can partner together inside within Extension, but then also figure out who your other program area, who they have for partners, because you may find that they already have that set in stone and you can just add to it. So for example, FCS and our marine science person, our Sea Grant person, we work together on a seafood at your fingertips program where we are trying to increase seafood consumption and people feeling comfortable with seafood. I know our 4-H program worked with our marine science agent, and they worked on, I don't know exactly what you call it, Andrea, but I know it was working on science fair projects. They worked with some clubs or some groups this summer to help them work on their science fair projects. We have a tiny market, which works with 4-H and FCS, and actually our community development agent. In some ways, we have a farmer's market that comes out of our office, and we work with SNAP-Ed with her, as well as 4-H goes out and has 4-H days at the farmer's market. So there are lots of ways that we've worked within our office. But the best part about that is as we go out and expand within our own program areas, as we listen to other conversations that are going out in the community and hearing what other partners that are going on out there, we can not just take our own program area out. Because we've already partnered in so many different areas, I feel very comfortable when I go to a school health advisory committee meeting, when they start asking questions about marine science or our lagoon or any of those kind of things, I feel confident that I can explain some of the opportunities they have to work with our marine science agent. So we do look for how we're working internally and then expand it to externally so that we can all be that partnering advocate for all of us, for everyone in the office. It's not just for one person, one program that way. So I know we've talked about a lot of things, and I feel like we covered it very quickly. The one thing that I kind of feel like we've skipped over and maybe didn't clarify as much, which I want to kind of just go back because I have a few minutes before we ask for questions, was the differences in how we actually partnered with after school when it came to the gardens versus it came to the culinary components. I'm going to talk real quickly about the culinary component, and then Andrea will probably cover more what we're doing with 4-H. I'm kind of going to go back to that slide, but I want to make sure that you understand. I had a program assistant that would go out to any of the schools, or 3 to 4 schools a week, and go out and teach once a week a culinary activity, preparing a snack, learning different food safety aspects, learning different nutritional aspects as they do that. We go out for 7 weeks. We do it for 6 weeks where we're training the kids, and on the 7th week, this is my favorite part, we have the kids prepare food and invite their parents to taste it, or whoever's picking them up, which is where we found out a lot about those success stories like I talked about earlier. But I love that part because it really encouraged us to be able, or it helped us to have those conversations and make sure that our students and our parents were actually having food conversations and talking about whether they wanted to eat together as a family, or if they wanted to try something new. I had a couple of people. I had one child who had never tried fresh pineapple ever. It had only been in a can, and they were so excited to try it. They went home and talked to their parent about it, so much so that when it came to Thanksgiving dinner, they decided to try a new stuffing that included pineapple because they were so excited about the taste and how much they liked pineapple. So those are really fun stories, and we really like those because we know if they're having these conversations now, they're going to happen much more later. Another example is I had a student in the class, and both her parents were chefs, literally cooked all the time, but had never cooked with their child. And so as the student expressed interest after having this class with the after-school program, the mom was super excited to share her expertise with her daughter, and they had started preparing meals together and worked on different meals together. So little simple things, you'd think, oh, that's crazy. How did they not do it together? But right, we all know we get busy and things just happen. And so this gives parents and students the opportunity to talk about something that everybody has in common, which is food. Everybody eats. Not everybody grows, but everybody eats. So it gives people that opportunity to talk about that. The next thing, so I'm going to let Andrea talk about the 4-H component and how that kind of works and how she does all those specific trainings. And then we'll open it up to questions.
All right, so Beth did a great job of summarizing what we do with the SNAP Ed program, the culinary lessons. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the gardening, the 4-H piece of this partnership. So when Vanessa started it, she was the one who was doing it. And now we are fortunate enough to have a program assistant actually in the county whose sole purpose in life is to go out and do these garden programs. Because it has grown so much in popularity, we now do actually, this year we'll have 12 sites that we're doing gardening at for 21st Century. And then we also have schools outside of this partnership who have heard about our gardening programs. And so they've asked us to come on out and do gardening programs and gardening clubs with them. So overall, we have probably close to about 20 school sites with gardens right now in Brevard County that are affiliated with 4-H, which is really, really exciting. So the premise of our program is to go out once a month to each of these schools, to their garden site, and we'll do 2 things. So the first thing we'll do is we'll work in the garden, and the second thing that we will do is we'll have a gardening lesson. So the gardening activity in the actual garden at the beginning of the year might be actually building the garden. So the kids get to help build the raised bed garden. So they get to learn how to use a drill. You know, they get to screw the lumber together with brackets. It's a really fun time for them because a lot of them might not necessarily have ever used tools before. So they get to do that, and then they get to fill the beds with compost, which is always a lot of fun because they always get to complain about how stinky it is and all that. So they have a really good time getting messy building the gardens. And then the next time we go out, we might be planting the seeds, and then we might be weeding another time out there until we actually get to harvest all of our products that they grew, which they think is so cool to see what they grew from a seed. They can't believe that, you know, they grew a tomato from a seed or a cucumber from a seed, and it makes them much more willing to try those vegetables and fruits afterwards. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is we do a gardening lesson. So we typically use the Junior Master Gardener curriculum, Learn, Eat, Grow, and Go. It's worked really well for us over the years, and we would highly recommend that curriculum if you don't already have a gardening curriculum that you use. All right. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to open it on up to questions. So I guess they'll just be in the chat section. So if you have any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat and we will answer them for you.
Did you get a question?
Nope. Oh yeah, so Beth just reminded me, I totally forgot while I'm waiting for any questions to come in. We also leave lessons for the after-school coordinator and the counselors to do with the kids between our visits. And so that's making sure that their learning and their education is continuing while we're not there, since we can't go out every day or every week to all of these sites. So we will leave lessons and lesson materials with the counselors from that gardening curriculum for them to do in between the times that we're there. And we'll also give them a schedule of what they need to do with the actual garden. So whether they need to weed, when they need to water, all of those kinds of things, because again, they might not be gardening experts at the school. So we just provide them with that structure and that schedule of what they will need to do while we are not there at the school. Go ahead.
And the fun thing about that is too, the first 6 schools, they've been kind of doing it for 2 years. So this year, the schools are kind of going out, those 6 original schools are going kind of out on their own. And so they're not going to be seen as often, and they're going to be more of a check-in thing. So then the after-school program is actually going to be responsible for more of the lessons, but they're going to be checked on. So it's actually moving itself to them being more responsible and that school being able to take care of the garden more on their own. So as we give them 2 years of our attention, monthly attention, they do, by the 3rd year, we're going to do a little bit less hands-on and a little bit more letting them do it on their own.
All right, we do have a question from Betsy, and she said, did you receive any training on partnership development? If not, what do you wish you had known before you started?
We did not. And we've kind of been doing this program, this partnership program for a little bit now, because we found that it's not always been the way, maybe not always been the extension way. We kind of stayed in our silos at some point, or we've stayed within our own little groups, and we haven't really always ventured out. So we didn't get any formal training by any means. It was kind of trial and error. And it really did kind of help that we worked a lot more alike, that it was easy for us to work together and just kind of brainstormed and said, we want to do this, and how can we help each other? And so that's kind of where ours has started. And then, of course, Angelika came along in the last 1.5 years, and she does a great job partnering outside. Not that we weren't partnering outside, we absolutely were, but she has taken it to, her job allows her to go to more meetings per se, or more opportunities where partners are. So she's been able to take that to a further, take that a little bit further for us, to promote extension within more audiences than we've had in the past. So if we're asking us do we wish we had known ahead of time, probably the key ingredients. I would say the key ingredients, I go back and kind of I go back and look at those key ingredients that we showed you. If you can pull those up, can you scroll to them? The key ingredients we have used, every time I'm going to a meeting or I know that there's potential for our partner, I really look at those key ingredients, because I feel like those really help me put together what I'm trying to say or what I really want out of the partnership. In addition to that, it's helped me not just become, a wayfarer on the side, and make sure that I'm getting my logos and getting the credit that I need for partnering with people. But I think, so here's an example. This year, a hospital was interested in doing more nutrition lessons in middle school. We do a lot with elementary. Middle schools are a little bit harder for us to get into more regularly. I don't have the staff to be doing what I do in elementary schools. So they wanted something to be done. They wanted it to be done quickly. I was all on board, but I knew that I had to have written out what it would cost me to do. Like, if I was going to implement this the way they wanted it, what are the costs? And I was ready with all of those costs. Unfortunately, they looked at the cost and went, out of our budget. But it helped us to hone in on what their real true expectations were, and it helped them to realize that that was not exactly what they were ready to do. They needed to pull their program back a little bit more. But I think that ultimately having these key ingredients ahead of time or have known them longer would have helped me to be more succinct during meetings.
Okay.
Differences?
All right. So we have another question, and that is, how many of these kids actually joined a 4-H club? And so I guess I have two separate answers for this question. The first one is all of them joined a 4-H club, because every single one of these schools has an after-school 4-H club in it. That is one of the components of this partnership. So anybody who is doing the gardening program is in a 4-H club at their school. So they are all doing the 4-H pledge and all of that kind of stuff. They have a 4-H club structure within that program. So they are all in a 4-H club, and we do count all of those numbers. The second answer to that would be not all of them are in a community club, and that would be because a lot of them are in low-income areas. They might be minority students, and they don't necessarily always have the means and resources to get to a community club meeting. They might have parents working multiple jobs. They might not have a car or access to any transportation to get to a meeting. So not all of them are in community clubs. I would say actually the vast majority of them are not in community clubs. So we do have a few, but they are all in after-school 4-H clubs.
But the other part of that, Andrea, is that they are all invited to participate in anything that 4-H is doing. So multiple schools participated in their county fair with entries of different kinds. And so they truly are a 4-H member, yeah, just like everyone else.
They are absolutely a part of our 4-H community, just like any other 4-H member in the county. Our next question is, I noticed your logos don't include a 4-H clover. Is there a reason that's left off of the PowerPoint?
I think that we've had them on some of our partnership PowerPoints. Thank you. I can't speak. But honestly, for some, I don't know. I don't really know why that one was left off as much as just the same way the 21st Century Grant component of their logo was left off this one. I think we at one point had an end slide that had every logo on it, but in order to have room on each PowerPoint page, we picked our two top, like for their side and our side. And then our 4-H clover would go when we have like all of them, including FCS, including 21st Century Grant and all that kind of stuff. And so we can't have it on any page. I'm just not sure it wasn't left off of just PowerPoint. Add that last page that we usually have all of our logos.
Yeah, certainly not intentional in any way besides just a space issue. So trying to represent all of our partners on one PowerPoint slide is difficult. So we did just pick those two larger entities, thank you. And then they'd all be at the end of the PowerPoint. Do you have any other questions before we sign off?
We would be happy to answer any questions. You're welcome to email us at any time because we know sometimes things come up or you never know what's going to present itself at any other given time. So by all means, please make sure that you ask or feel free to ask us any other questions that may come down the pike, because I know that happens to me all the time.
Well, I appreciate this very much for you all stepping forward and delivering a wonderful presentation today. And if anybody is interested in delivering more of these webinars, we do have a very simple process to submit a proposal, and we would love to have more of these. We are looking for a September webinar too. But ladies, thank you so much. This was wonderful information.
Thank you so much.
Well, everyone have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and see you all next month.